You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host Keith Angle on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Hey guys, Keith Angle for TGI Sports Talk's College Sports Huddle. Just playing around with a little new music tonight. Try to mix it up a little bit. A little new background. We'll change the background up for football talk here tonight. We'll change it up for the basketball portion. Try to keep you guys in the mood. Hope everybody's doing well tonight. I know I am. It's exciting. Basketball is really hitting high gear as we get closer and closer to conference tournaments, March Madness, lots of fun coming up. We'll be talking about some college football tonight, some news and notes around the world of college football. So we'll talk a little bit about the top players who have decided to come back, whether it's to their existing school or to a new school. And I don't know, Ed Reed saga a little bit. Then we'll jump into some college basketball. Look at the rankings. Look at UConn's just free fall. Kansas in a slump. Purdue back on top. Look a little bit about Bronny. Who's looking at Bronny? Bronny, an All-American. McDonald's All-American. LeBron is very happy. We'll talk about the top tiers. We'll get started talking about bracketology. Georgetown is broken that awful losing streak. 29 straight games in the Big East. They finally break that, beating Butler the other night. Good evening, CA. Good to have you with us tonight. Welcome everybody on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We're here broadcasting live on, of course, TGI Sports Talk homepage, Northeast Streaming Sports, simulcasting on Let's Talk Sports. We keep branching out to more and more and more avenues. Great to have everybody with us tonight. We want to get your topics in tonight, too, so please do that. And by the way, just a quick program note, I'll be on right following the show, immediately following the show. Check out Sports Scopes, as I'll be on with Robert Butler. Talk about Bill O'Brien, which is one of our topics in college football tonight, leaving Alabama, going back to the New England Patriots. And we'll talk about Tom Brady looking for schools in Miami, interestingly enough. But that's another story. So we're going to talk some college sports tonight. So be prepared, bring those topics, bring those comments, and we'll take it to the wire. Where are we going to start tonight? Let's start with Greg Rawlings. Let's give Greg a shout out tonight. Let's give up a group shout out to Football is Life and Greg Rawlings, who's the admin there, the creator of that group, does a great job with that, and is America's favorite pastime, baseball. So shout out to Greg tonight and the Football is Life group, of which I'm one of the moderators. So what's going on around college football that we need to be abreast of tonight? Some important stuff. I guess we'll start with what I talked about just a second ago. Alabama's looking for two coordinators now, as their defensive coordinator had already left to go to Ole Miss here a few weeks ago, staying not only in the SEC, but in the division. And now Bill O'Brien, who formerly was with the Patriots back in the mid-2000s, I guess we'll say, before he went to Penn State, on to Texas. The Texans, Houston Texans, where he was the head coach for quite a while and did a good job developing Matt Schaub there. He was never, this guy was never one of the best quarterbacks in football, but he developed him into a very, very reliable NFL quarterback. Did a good job with Bryce Young, obviously, at Alabama. Has a relationship of sorts with Mac Jones already. We're not going to talk too much about, we'll talk a little bit about this from the Patriots side because it is news, but we want to stick on the college side of this. Mac Jones was really the person at Alabama who helped Bill O'Brien get up to speed on the terminology that they used on the offense and whatnot. So he spent the last 2 seasons there, never coached Mac Jones, as it were, but we'll see how that works out. So, the Patriots need a lot of help. Now, Alabama's become sort of a landing spot and rebirthing spot for a lot of coaches now. Lane Kiffin kind of started this trend, if I'm not mistaken. I would say he was kind of the first one. Then Steve Scarsazian came in there. Who else? Butch Jones came in there. But from the offensive coordinator side, he's had 6 different offensive coordinators now in 8 seasons. They've all moved on to theoretically better jobs. Some are coaching in the NFL, like Brian Daboll. Now Bill O'Brien as an offensive coordinator. Lane Kiffin's a head coach at Ole Miss. Mike Locksley. I'm trying to think where Mike Locksley is now. Not really sure where Mike Locksley ended up, but Steve Scarsazian, we know, is a head coach at Texas. We'll try to get some information on Locksley. So they'll be looking for a new, as I said, offense coordinator and a defense coordinator, as Pete Golden has left for the same position at Ole Miss, as I mentioned earlier this month. So we'll see how that works out for everybody. Good evening, Carlos, the Mad New Yorker. Good to have you in the house tonight. Listen, believe me, when I report this news, I'm not saying that there'll be any problems. Nick Saban will have no trouble recruiting a new offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator there. Everybody's dying to work with Nick Saban. And listen, the right guy is going to be sitting in one of those chairs when Nick Saban does retire. And that guy might be sitting in a pretty good seat when the music stops. Maybe McDermott should go there and try to get at least one championship. Yeah. Well, we're not going to talk about the Bills tonight. What are you talking about? What is with the one-word things here? Okay, we're not going to talk anymore. And listen, he's not going to hire Joe Judge to be his offensive coordinator. That's for sure. It'll be interesting. He's had a habit of rehabilitating coaches, coaching reputations, for lack of a better term. Maybe he goes that same direction. I'm trying to think of some offensive-minded coaches that might have been fired in the this recent batch of coaching carousels. I should look around here. Let me take a quick look here at the coaching carousel in football. Let's see who lost their job. How about Tom Herman? Sorry, he's got a job. He's at Florida Atlantic. Let's see. Who can we? I'm looking for some offensive-minded coaches. Willie Taggart. He's got a job. How about Scott Frost? Wouldn't that be interesting? I don't see that happening, but who knows? Paul Christ. Tim Lester. Probably on the defensive side of the ball. Carl Dorrell, I don't see that happening. David Shaw, very interesting. He did resign. I don't see him taking a coordinator's position, though. Brian Harsin. Interesting. We'll see if he goes that direction again, as he's done in the past. What do you got here, Carlos? Guys under Saban that rehab at Bama. I think that's what I was saying for sure. That guy who went to UT. Who's that? Well, if you're talking about Butch Jones, I mean, when he went to UT, he already tried to rehabilitate one head coach from UT, and Butch Jones. That didn't work out too well. He went to Arkansas State, I believe, and it's not working out well for him, for sure. You're talking about Pruitt, Jeremy Pruitt. You know what? Interesting. That's an interesting thought, Carlos, actually. But I think he might be a bit of a hot potato because he was getting out in front of the NCAA, if you remember. Right, Pruitt. Getting out in front of the NCAA. So I don't know if that's going to be something that he's willing to take on. We'll see how that turns out here as we go forward. So other news, obviously, I don't want to get too much into it, but still some sad news. And, the Georgia revelations with the sad death of their player, Devin Whitlock, who was killed in a car crash along with one of the female staffers. I mean, there was 4 people in this car, and I don't want to look at the conjecture here. It's not really good. Not a good look for the university. And, tragically, 2 people lost their lives here. So we'll see how this turns out. Washington State, as my site just crashes here with my news items. Sorry. Let's pull up something different because that ain't working. What the hell? I know what happened here. Bear with me, guys. It's the wonders of technology not working when I want it to. Josh Heupel, speaking of Tennessee, has gotten himself an extension and a raise to $9 million per year. It's going to be, I guess nobody in the SEC is going to be making less than $8 or $9 or $10 million here pretty soon. If you're not making $9 million, you're nobody in the SEC, it seems. So he's now, it's a raise of $4 million for Josh Heupel, who becomes the 5th ranked highest coach in the SEC, behind, of course, Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, Jimbo Fisher, who is the most deserving of all of them, of course, and Brian Kelly at LSU. So he also, did he get more years? I don't think he did. I know he got certainly a nice raise, though, as it were. So good for him. Josh Heupel's done a good job in reviving that Tennessee program. It'll be interesting to see what happens next year, as he'll have to replace Hooker. We'll see if Milton is the answer at quarterback, and we'll see what else happens there as well. I started to talk about Washington State coach Jake Dickert also landed an extension through 2027 that will keep him with the Cougars. I love it when articles say we'll keep him with the Cougars through 2027. Like any contracts are honored in college basketball, college football, anywhere in college sports. We don't honor anything. They're as good as the paper as they're written on. Terrible. He's done a good job at Washington State, though, after taking over for Nick Rolovich, who was fired basically for refusing to get a COVID-19 vaccination. That's a whole nother story, which we won't get into here. But anyway, congratulations to Coach Dickert on his extension. What else? That's not good news. I really don't want to talk about that. Enough bad news in football, right? You know what I want to talk about, though, in the world of football? I want to talk about, actually, I thought I had another news item I wanted to get into here. Tennessee, Kerm got his car stolen. Nobody cares. He'll be able to afford it. Oh, Ed Reed. Ed Reed. Let's talk quickly about Ed Reed. Ed Reed, as you know, about 25 days ago, or 25 days before he was announced he wouldn't become the coach, he was named, you remember, the next head coach of Bethune-Cookman. But then the school declined to ratify his contract. So kind of the time frame is Reed entered into agreement in principle with the school in December to become the program's next head coach. He says he was committed to coaching and cultivating with the university, players, and fans. And it's extremely disappointing that this won't happen. He did make some rather incendiary comments on social media about the program. And, this is just a weird story. I don't know. It's obvious that somebody promised him something that the university refused to deliver on. And as it turns out, now Bethune-Cookman's looking for a coach. Ed Reed is going to have a stain on him, as he badly wants to coach in Division I football. He openly has campaigned for the Miami job before. He wants to coach, but this is not going to help him going forward. This is a bad look for him. It's a bad look for the university. And I'm just not sure how this will all turn out. But it's not, like I said, this is just a bad look for everybody. There's a lot of bad looks in college football between a couple of stories at University of Georgia, between the whole NIL nonsense with Florida losing their top recruit. And again, we know how I feel about this whole NIL thing. $13 million was promised to this kid. $13 million that this conglomerate, again, the word's escaping me that I should be using, didn't have. This is happening all over the place, by the way. Bad stories in college football. And it's all about money. All of it's about money. It's just so sad. You need to get an SEC. Everybody needs an SEC coaching job, man. Jeez, it's like hitting the lottery. You could be like Jimbo Fisher. You don't even need a win. $3 million. You gotta go to Vanderbilt. They'll probably offer you $750,000. A little off topic for Rick. The Mohawks hot stove dinner's coming up. We'd love to promote that. Excellent guest speakers here with Cecil Fielder and Charlie Hayes, former Yankees, as well as other teams, obviously. Cecil Fielder probably had his heydays with the Tigers, but great job getting them up there. I think, if I'm not mistaken, my second cousin, Chris Yeager, had a lot to do with getting them into the area, because I believe they're attending another event in the area as well, which is, I don't remember the name of it now, but it's good to hear that they're going to be in Amsterdam. Don't know where it's being held, Rick, but certainly keep us abreast of that. We'll certainly announce it on the rest of our shows as well, especially the Sunday show. Congratulations to the Amsterdam Mohawks and Brian Spagnola for getting them to there. They get some great keynote speakers, right? They've had Dwight Gooden, they've had Bobby Valentine. I think Howard Johnson, and I'm missing a bunch. Just a couple that come to mind. Both guys were Yankees. Yes, they were both Yankees and others. I mean, Charlie Hayes probably had his best days elsewhere. He won a world championship with the Yankees in '96, which is how I remember Charlie Hayes. Really good glove, decent bat. Had good years with the Phillies and the Giants, and by all accounts, a good guy. Clock Tower. Isn't that Clock Tower? There's a banquet hall in the Clock Tower now. That's interesting. I did not know that. I know the Armory's been all redone. I did not know the Clock Tower had a event venue. And they're doing a signing. Yes, they are doing a signing event as well, I'm sure. We'll keep our fans abreast of that, definitely. Rick, if you can get me some information, and I will certainly push that a little bit as well on the show. I'd be happy to do that. And congratulations to those guys for getting a couple of good names for that. That's very interesting. So anyway, yes, the Ed Reed, what a mess. What a mess. But is there other than Georgia winning and, the great Stetson Bennett story, is there anything good happening in college football? Man, it's so ugly. Everything going on. Yikes. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about who's staying. Who's staying in college football? Do I have a that's for basketball. I guess I don't have a real. Yeah, I guess I don't. That's okay. This is chatter. Who's going to stay? Who are the big kids who could have come out and probably been drafted fairly high, at least in their own minds, but they've decided to stay in school for one reason or another? They might be chasing a championship. They might be looking to hone their skills a little bit. Or, quite honestly, they could be staying because they're going to make more money in college next year than they would in the pros. If you're gonna be a third round selection in the NFL draft, you might as well stay in school. Sam Hartman, they're probably past the third round. Sam Hartman would go, but he's going to stay and go to Notre Dame. Who are some of the other really big names? The biggest names have decided to stay. Let me just check the date on this. So this was updated January 18th. So if anything's changed in the last 7 days, you guys can correct me. Michael Penix might be, for me, the number one name on here. I think Michael Penix Jr. Goes into next year as a Heisman Trophy candidate, leading Heisman Trophy candidate. He had a great year at Washington last year. Washington, for me, is one of the teams to watch making a breakthrough. I think they made a breakthrough this year, but really breaking through and maybe being a dark horse contender for a national championship or at least a playoff spot. DeBoer's done a great job there, and I do think Michael Penix will have a huge year. He had a big year this year, threw for 4,600 yards and 31 touchdowns as they went 11-2, surprising a lot of people. So I think this team will have I think they'll get a lot of buzz as being playoff contenders. So Penix decides to stay. Hard to say where his draft position would have been, but again, if you're going to be a third rounder, late second, third round, you're probably better off staying in college. My guess is he will be collecting more NIL money than he would if he went into the NFL this year. Bo Nix out of Oregon, same kind of situation. Moved from Auburn. Michael Penix, by the way, moved from the Big Ten in Indiana to Washington before last year. Bo Nix moved from Auburn to Oregon, had a big year for Oregon with 44 touchdown passes. Big Pac-12's done a great job in landing some really good quarterbacks in the transfer portal here the last few years. Bo Nix, I would expect to have another big year. And I think the Big 12 or the Pac-12 is going to be much better next year. I mean, you've got Washington that's really going to take a step up. I think Oregon will be better in landing second season there. USC is only going to get better. If they can improve that defense, they'll get better. UCLA got to replace their quarterback, but Chip Kelly's done a really good job in the portal. Washington State, Oregon State, all surprises last year. I think the Pac-12, and you got Deion coming in. I know that comment will come in here in a minute, but Colorado's going to have some work to do. Don't expect them to be in the hunt for the Pac-12 right out of the gate. Not going to happen. Let's see if we got any comments here while I'm getting ready to continue here. Okay. Jordan Travis. I missed a guy here somewhere. Blake Corum is coming back to Michigan, which is a big deal for them. Really missed Blake Corum, or a healthy Blake Corum, in the playoff. Lost to both in the Big Ten championship game, which they did win, and the playoff loss to TCU. Blake Corum, that was a big part of their game. Running the football for Michigan is still a big part of their game. What could they have stayed in that game with TCU if he was healthy? I think they would have certainly had a better chance to control the football a little bit, keep the defense off the field. They would have gotten killed by Georgia anyway. Because the Big Ten, until they can throw the football better, like Ohio State at least, they're not going to really catch up to the SEC. As much as I hate to give in to the SEC elitists, you guys are really good. Jordan Travis, quarterback for Florida State. Florida State with a big rebound last year to 10-2. He threw for 3,200 yards. He rushed for 400 yards. Total 32 touchdowns. Mike Norvell, his system really taking hold in his third year, I believe. A big year for him, as he was really under fire this year, especially with Deion basically campaigning for that job without actually saying he was. But you know that the alumni, if he had failed, there's no doubt in my mind Deion would be in Tallahassee and not Boulder. Tommy Eckenberg, a linebacker for Ohio State, will be returning, one of the top linebackers in the Big 12. Jared Versay, who we've talked about here before, defensive lineman for Florida State, maybe the best defensive lineman in the country, and a transfer from Albany State right here locally. Last year, he was projected as a number 11 player if he was to come out for the draft, and he's decided to return to Tallahassee. for his senior year. Braylon Trice, defensive lineman from Washington, will return. Oh, this is a guy I'll never be able to say. Fashanui, offensive lineman for Penn State. Listen, I bash Penn State a lot and James Franklin a lot, and you got to show me you can beat Ohio State and Penn State. Next year's the year. If he does not get this team over the hump, James Franklin's going to be answering a lot of hard questions. Let's see. What do you got here? CU wants, they do want to dominate after OU and TU leave for the SEC. That's, I think you're probably more referring to USC and UCLA leaving for the Big Ten as CU plays in the Pac-12, not the Big 12, although there'd probably be a better fit for the Big 12. That's where they came from. But listen, if Deion stays there long enough, and I think he'll stay there because I don't think he's probably taking another job until the Florida State job comes open. As soon as the Florida State job comes open, Deion is gone. I do not think, I've said it here and I've said it on some other shows, I don't think Deion wants to coach in the NFL. I really don't. I think he wants to work with kids. He doesn't need the money, but he likes it. I'm sure we all like money. We all want more. But I don't think he really has a desire to coach in the NFL. This is just me and from some of the things that I've read and heard, I don't think Deion's got a burning desire for the NFL. I think he's got a burning desire to coach for his alma mater, though. And he'll stay in CU and make them relevant if he's there long enough. I can see them jumping to 500 this year. Remember, this is one of the worst. This is probably the worst Power 5 conference team in the country. I don't think that's really putting myself out there on a limb too much, or was. He's done a great job in the transfer portal already, and watch out. So CA, remember, I think it's the Pac-12, not the Big 12. You've got a little bit confused there, but believe me, I do that a lot. Sam Hartman, we already talked about. He had options. He could have returned to Wake Forest, could have gone to the NFL. He went to the transfer portal. He's going to compete for the job. He's not being given the job in Notre Dame, at least, outwardly. Marcus Freeman has kind of stated there'll be a quarterback competition in the fall or in the summer, and we'll see how that shakes out. Jerzon Newton, defensive lineman from Illinois, another big star that's returning. Tyler Davis, defensive lineman for Clemson. Cam Rising. I failed to mention Utah when I was talking about the Pac-12 teams. The Pac-12 is going to be much better. We've maligned this conference for a long time, myself included. But this conference is ready to take a leap. Cam Rising coming back to a really good Utah team. And this is a guy who, got hurt in the Rose Bowl and probably, it may have played part in his decision to come back. I'm not sure. Now, I would have thought maybe an injury would have said I should make the jump to the NFL now. But I think Cam Rising will probably benefit from another year in school and be a higher draft pick come next year if he were to, when he comes out then. And we'll take a look either tonight or soon about the we'll take a look at the draft, where the quarterbacks will go and things like that. What do you got here? Alan, welcome, Alan. Good to have you here with us tonight. Deion doesn't want to coach millionaires, rather coach. I agree with this 100%. I think this is, and listen, I thought, and I owe to Deion Sanders an apology, and when he went to coach Jackson State, I thought it was a publicity stunt. I didn't think Deion was going to be a good coach. Turns out he's a great coach. Turns out he's a great molder of young men. And I do think, I agree with Alan. This is what I was saying when I said he doesn't have a burning desire to go to the NFL. He doesn't want to coach millionaires, as Alan very smartly states here. He does want to help these kids grow into better adults. Yes, he wants to win games and win championships. I'm sure every competitive person does. And Deion's a competitive guy. Don't let that get past you. But I think he likes this. I really thought there was a chance. again, until the Florida State job opened up, that he would stay right there at Jackson State and stay with and I know there's some people that are getting on him for leaving because he should stay there and really help the historically black colleges with that type of exposure that he gives them. But, look, he's brought them some limelight here the last 3 years. I don't think it's his responsibility to carry that torch all by himself. So, again, you're right, Alan. Good call there. Who else? Dylan Gabriel, quarterback for Oklahoma, with some up and down results this last year. Did throw for 3,100 yards and total of 31 touchdowns on the ground and throwing the football. It's going to be a big year for Oklahoma next year. Dylan Gabriel coming back probably helps them. This is going to be Venable needs to have a good season next year. There's talent on this team. Lincoln Riley didn't leave the cupboard bare. He took Caleb Williams with him, but you replaced him with a pretty good quarterback. 6-7, or even 7-6, isn't getting it done next year, and Venable is going to be facing some heat himself if he doesn't get this thing turned around quickly, especially with him going to the SEC in 2 years. You don't want to turn into Nebraska, moving to the Big Ten. You don't want to. Oklahoma doesn't want to become that. And you know what? They could be teetering on the precipice of that if they're not careful. I know you're going to disagree with me, Alan, and feel free to do so. And I'm not saying that's going to happen. There's some good talent there. They're still recruiting well. They got to improve that defense. We know that Lincoln Riley can't coach defense, but that doesn't mean there aren't athletes there that you can coach up, right? I mean, come on. Keith Randolph, defensive lineman for Illinois, will be back. Spencer Rattler, who was derided on this show every time I brought him up last year, at least early in the year. He had a very good second half of the season, beat some really good teams, and was part of the reason that Shane Beamer was able to get this program headed in the right direction. Great job by Shane Beamer. And I think Spencer Rattler coming back is very smart. If he has NFL aspirations, he's got a long ways to go. I think maturing as a player and maturing as a person before he's ready for the big time. But Spencer Rattler will be back to try to continue that improvement at South Carolina. Johnny Wilson, wide receiver for Florida State. KJ Jefferson, the quarterback, the mercurial quarterback, if you will, for Arkansas. He's up and down, threw for 2,600 yards and 24 touchdowns last year. Did have a pretty good force running the ball as well. Very important piece of this Arkansas resurgence as well. I think a disappointing season for Arkansas and KJ Jefferson last year, and I think he'll look to redeem himself there. Trey Benson, running back for Florida State. Jaden Daniels transferred into LSU last year and led them to a much better season at 9-4, I believe they finished. Much better, and a spot in the SEC championship game, more importantly. Much better first season for Brian Kelly than I would have thought. Jaden Daniels, I think, smartly decides to stay in school. He rushed for 885 yards, threw for 2,900 yards, and a total of 29 touchdowns. Smart move by him. And last, as we rank like the top 20, Rome Aduzzi from Washington, wide receiver, will stay there and catch balls. Michael Penix Jr. Washington is my team to watch out for next year. Absolutely my team to watch out for. Oh, what do you got here, Alan? Check out Alan's new show, too, by the way. But he's got a bunch of shows. Alan's going to be doing more shows than me pretty soon. Maybe he already is. He'll have a new show all about Oklahoma sports. There was some talk, Alan. I can't remember what I was asked. Rick, maybe you remember if he was going to cover a certain sport. And I don't remember. I don't think Alan was with us that day. And it might have been a Sunday Stream of Consciousness show. But check out Alan's his roundtable show and also his Oklahoma sports, covering all things Oklahoma. I expect some better comments out of you about my boy, Mike Gundy, going forward as well, Alan. Just an FYI. What do you got here? Got the number 2 recruiting class behind Manning, number 2 quarterback, in the recruiting class behind Manning. Well, you'll need it. I mean, again, this is you. I think you've got to agree with me that this is a big year for Coach Venable and the Sooners. They need to turn this thing around as they head into the SEC. This cannot be another 6-7 or 7-6 season. They need to win the Big 12 in my mind. Leave this conference on a high note. And it's going to be tough because that league is going to be, I think K-State will still be very good. I think TCU will definitely take a step back, but Texas will be better depending on what happens with their quarterback situation and some other things. So anyway, Jackson Arnold, I believe is his name. Number 2, I believe you are correct, by the way. Isn't it interesting that the number 7 quarterback, what's his name? I can't remember the kid now who now has been to Miami. He's committed to Miami and he's committed to Florida in the last 2 months, and had his NIL deal pulled because they didn't have the money to fund it. Unbelievable, man. Telling you keep telling me what a great deal this is, Carlos. Who's it good for? How does this deal at Florida help anybody? It hurts the coaching staff. It hurts the reputation. It doesn't say $13 million deal with, Gator alumni / gosh, what's the wording? I keep saying conglomerate, but that's not it. Oh, God, why is it escaping me? Anyway, the headlines don't say that. The headlines say Florida loses number 1 quarterback recruit over NIL deal. Who's that hurt? That hurts their recruiting badly. Hurts the kids' standing. He's been at 2 schools in a month. Bad. Rangers versus Maple Leafs tonight. There's our hockey update. Go Rangers, by the way. Thank you, CA. Be with us Sunday. We'll have Jim Beringer back on to talk some NHL pucks on the Stream of Consciousness show. Speaking of Washington, it was with Mickey's birthday, I think yesterday, wasn't it, Rick? Maybe it was Monday. I did wish him a happy birthday, and I hope Mickey's doing well. We haven't seen him on this show in a while, and I do hope he's doing well. Rick had asked me about Mickey. He's popped in here and there, and Rick may not have been here that night. I think it was only maybe one night I saw him. But I hope Mickey's doing okay. Big Washington Husky and Washington Cougar fan. So happy birthday again to Mickey, if you happen to hear that. Alan Show, going to talk mostly OU sports this weekend, including some softball. Cool. Girls softball at Oklahoma, very good. Or is it Oklahoma State? I forget which one's the really good one. And again, I want some better coverage from Mike Gundy. I want some positive coverage from Mike Gundy, my boy. Oh, he's a man. Thank you. Oh, God. Oh, my God. Anyway. What else are we going to talk about tonight? What else we got in college football? I don't have a lot else in college football. Let's see what I got up here. Did I give myself any other notes? Let's look at this. Jaden Rashada, by the way. That's the guy's name I couldn't remember, from Florida. What a freaking nightmare, man. This whole thing, this is going to explode. This is just going to implode. And again, they're going to crawl and ask Congress for help is how they're going to get out of this whole mess. Oh, boy. Anyway. Just looking over some of the questions in the mailbag for Mandel on The Athletic today. If there's anything important we wanted to chat about. There's an interesting question about Hugh Freeze and whether he can stabilize Auburn and get them back to relevance in the SEC. Auburn, to me, Auburn's had good football success, but not sustained. Nobody's been able to sustain things there. I mean, even when Pat Dye was there, they weren't like national championship contenders year after year. They weren't under Terry Bowden. They weren't under Gene Chizik, who got fired a year after winning a national championship. They weren't under Malzone, Gus Malzone, who also won the national championship. I think I talked about unrealistic expectations at LSU. I think the expectations at Auburn are more outrageous. I mean, I think with a 12-team expansion, I think they can expect to challenge and get into a playoff field, every third year, maybe get into a run where you're there 2 or 3 years in a row even, but not sustained success like Auburn rival Alabama's had or Georgia's had more recently. I think it's unrealistic to think that, anybody, much less Hugh Freeze started to do well at Mississippi before he was chased out of town. Escorts and all that stuff. But remember, he was 5-7 his last year, too. It wasn't like he had 2 really good years at Mississippi, by the way. Don't forget, he went really well, went to New Year's Day bowl games and beat Alabama both years before he went 5-7. College baseball. Listen, we're going to get into some college baseball here. And hopefully Alan will. I'm sure Alan will on his show as well. When the spring comes, I do want to talk some college baseball. We'll get Larry Sorensen on. He does cover, as he does the football team, he does the color analysis on the Wake Forest baseball. So we'll talk some college baseball with Larry and in general when we get to that part of the season, which probably will start up here pretty soon with the teams on the East Coast, Southeast Coast, I should say, as they head towards the College World Series in Oklahoma. Always a fun time. The only thing I don't like about college baseball, CA, is the aluminum bats. Because first of all, I hate the ping. Second of all, you can't really tell how good or how much power a kid has. When they're hitting with an aluminum bat, you don't know how good his line drive rate is because you can hit a ball and just hit a bullet with these aluminum bats, especially where they're made today. They were like that when I was playing. I was going to say 30 years ago. That'd be wrong. Not quite. I guess I was still playing a little bit when I was 32. So, I got to tell you too. Who's the guy? While we're talking about baseball, why don't you guys, Augie Garrido. I'm sure that you, CA, if you follow college baseball, know of him. He passed away a couple of years ago now, probably 4 years, maybe 5 years ago. But he was a coach at Cal Fullerton. He was a coach at Texas for a long time. There's a great documentary, and I think you can probably find it on YouTube. In fact, I know you can find it on YouTube. But go watch it. It covers his career, and there is no better coach in any sport and no better motivator of young men that I've ever seen than Augie Garrido. Loved him. Some classic rants by Augie too. So great coach. I know he's missed. He died 2018 now that I look at it. So check that out if you get a chance and you like these sports documentaries, behind the scenes, kind of look at somebody's career, especially if you like college baseball. If you like sports in general, it's a great documentary. Check it out. What do we got here? Rick Sherlock. The Mohawks have another Wake player signed for next season, former Amsterdam player. Yeah, I'd like to know who we talking about. He's from Amsterdam, Rick, playing for Wake. I'd love to know that myself, and we'll certainly keep an eye on him as the season goes on, for sure. Let's see. Got myself on all kinds of. I got myself off on a bunch of tangents here. Sorry. Anything else we want to talk about? I'm going to move to college basketball for a bit here if we don't want to talk about anything else. There's really nothing else that big going on in college football right now. We'll start looking at some of the draft projections here soon. We'll keep an eye on the transfer portal, of course. But I want to get into some college basketball. I'm just looking over some other stories to see if there's anything else we really need to cover. And unless you guys have something, we got here, Alan. Alan's got something for us. The 4 projected quarterbacks in the first round. By the way, yes, Anthony Richardson to me here is a reach, a huge reach in the first round. If I'm anybody, and I think Anthony Richardson, he's the candidate to fall. Like Ritter. No, Ritter, I guess you can't say fell. Malik Willis was probably the guy who fell, took the hardest fall last year. I would say Richardson's the guy to do it here. I would look for Will Levis to go number 1, by the way. I think he's the most ready to play right now. And I do think C.J. Stroud will go before Bryce Young. There's a couple of comments on those guys, and we'll get into them a little bit deeper as we go through, too. Smart fellows get practice in the woods. Good point. Cape Cod League, and there's a couple. If I'm not mistaken, Rick, the perfect game league that we're talking about, where the Amsterdam Mohawks play here in upstate New York, I believe that's a wooden bat league as well. You can project all you want. Malik Willis was projected to go number 3 last year too. So where'd he get picked? Richardson is if Baltimore takes Richardson at 3, I'll stop doing this podcast. I'll have to back up on that comment, but again, I do not see Anthony Richardson being able to help an NFL team anytime in the near future. Now, I understand, nobody saw Brock Purdy being able to help an NFL team either. I get it. This is a kid, though, who had a very up-and-down career at Florida. He looked like a world beater to start the season last year against Utah. He didn't even have that great a year in college last year. This is not a kid ready to play in the NFL. The other 3, yes, they could play now. But Richardson's a project. He's not going number 3. And I'm sure I can find other projections. I do this with the Mad New Yorker all the time. I'm sure I can find projections for him anywhere from 3 to 103. But I would say, look up Malik Willis and see where he was projected last year. Right before the draft, guys. There was talk Carolina was going to take him right away. We didn't do our draft show last year where we call the picks for our teams. We didn't. We got to do that this year. I need more guys, what I need, Rick. You know what I'm going to do? So we don't need Patriots. We don't need the Vikings. You can help me round some guys up. That'd be awesome, Rick. We can, I don't know. We got Jet fans. So we got, we can let, you can get your brother Bob to pick for the Giants. Help me round some guys up. We got a Dallas picker and Allen. CA, not sure who he picks. We got Anthony Price, I think, is a Ravens. I don't know why I think he's a Ravens fan. I think we can put together a few guys. I got Tanner D, who can pick for the Chiefs from the Let's Talk Sports Network. We got I know they got some Bills fans over there. I think Nick Botkins is I want to see he's a Green Bay fan. I think Robert Butler's a Tennessee fan. So we can probably put this together, Rick. Maybe we'll put our heads together. Maybe when we get together for the baseball draft, I'll bring a football list and we'll try to fill in some names of people we got to get to draft for certain teams. I want to do that. I do want to do that. Have our own. We're only going to do one round, and there's going to be a time limit because I can't have the Mad New Yorker trying to make trades for 3 hours. But So let's do this. I'm going to do something different tonight. I'm going to keep you guys guessing. And we're going to change the background as we go to some college basketball and take a look around. I hope you guys stick around because I am getting excited about college basketball. But by the way, Friday night, we're going to go through some of the conferences. Friday night, big matchup in the MAC. Rick Pitino's Iona team will be up here to face the Siena Saints, the first place Siena Saints, and the second place Iona. All of a sudden, Iona's nickname is escaping me. So anyway, let's take a quick look. We'll start with the poll move. A lot of poll movement. Listen, UConn is crashed and burned. Oh my God. Is UConn? I don't think UConn's even in the. Is UConn still in the? Yeah, UConn's all the way down to 19. They've fallen 4 more spots as they continue to lose. And by the way, kudos to Patrick Ewing breaking the 29-game losing streak for the Hoyas against Butler the other night. Yikes! We got a new number 1 this week as Houston lost this week to who did Houston lose to? As we take a look here, they lost to Temple 56-55 at home, no less. Not a good loss for Houston. Houston's still a good team, but Purdue moves back up to number 1. They were number 1 earlier. Alabama, Nate Oates, and some tough circumstances there with one of their players being charged with murder. I see your commentary. I'll get to it in a second, Rick. Nate Oates being charged. One of their reserve players being charged with capital murder and supplying a gun in a shooting. Blah blah blah. We know all about that. But Alabama continues to play well. It's only the second time in like 32 years, maybe more than that they've been ranked as high as number 2. They've only been ranked number 1 once in their history, and I think they've only been as high as 2 once in their history after December. And Nate Oates, by the way, I got to give him some credit. For those of you who know Alabama and SEC basketball, Wimp Sanderson used to be the coach there and used to wear these plaid jackets every game. And Nate Oates has been channeling Wimp Sanderson here and there. He'll have the plaid jacket on from time to time. So kudos to him. Alabama playing some great basketball. 23 first-place votes in the AP poll. So that's pretty tight. Only 16 away from the 39 that Purdue got. So Alabama moving up. And we'll talk a little bit we're going to start talking about the number 1 seeds for the tournament, who's in line and, who the contenders are as we start looking at some bracketology. And we'll look a little bit at that tonight, probably for the first time. Houston fell to number 3, as we said. Tennessee's up 5 spots, playing really good basketball in the SEC. Probably the best team in the SEC right now. They move up 5 spots. Kansas State out of that Big 12. And Alan, I'll tell you this: you're not getting some of the teams you think will get in won't get in. I know Oklahoma and West Virginia are on the first 4 out right now in the bracketology list for ESPN. But Kansas State, they are in line for a number 1 seed if they continue to play like this. This team was unranked, I want to say 3 weeks ago. Unranked. They're now 5th in the country. They're up 8 more spots this week after beating Kansas. And who else did they beat since we last chatted? They lost Iowa State, so they're going to fall backwards. But they had beaten Texas Tech, Kansas most recently. So Kansas, watch out for Kansas State. Arizona up 5 spots. Arizona and UCLA will be in a conversation for a number 1 seed. Virginia playing good ball. Maybe the only team in the ACC with any kind of chance for that top seed. UCLA at 8. Kansas, as I said, in free fall after losing back-to-back games this week. Actually 3 games in a row to Kansas State. TCU, one of my sleepers. I talked about this with Tanner D on his show last Thursday night. TCU is a team that I would see. Last year I got on Arkansas, and Arkansas is really beat up. I'd like to jump back on them, but TCU is my team. Jamie Dixon, good coach, veteran team, good guard play. Watch out for TCU. And they also lost a resurging Baylor. Kansas did this past week. So they're, again, mid-season slump. This was a team that was undefeated, though, coming into the week. Or after we had our show last week anyway. Texas, they finally lose under their interim coach. And we know their head coach, Chris Beard, was fired here. Texas has done a really good job. Coach Terry's done a good job in his interim. Maybe he'll do well enough to keep that job. The team I just mentioned, TCU, moves up 3 spots to number 3. Iowa State, after a win over, this ranking would have come out. They beat Kansas State since this ranking came out. Iowa State was number 12. Xavier falls 5 spots after a tough week to number 13. Gonzaga, not a good year for Gonzaga, very up and down. This is not your classic Gonzaga team. They fall 8 spots to 14. Auburn up to 15. Marquette, Shaka Smart doing a great job at Marquette. Listen, this is a team that could very well do some damage, if not win the Big East tournament this year. Watch out for Shaka Smart and Marquette as we get to the postseason. Baylor, as we said, playing much better ball recently. They're up to 17. Charleston, who has yet to play anybody, by the way. I don't think they've beaten a top 100 team, but they're 21-1. There's number 18. They stay where they were. UConn drops 4 more spots. Been a tough run for UConn recently. Danny Hurley missed some time with COVID. They lost consecutive games to Marquette, who we mentioned a minute ago, St. John's, Seton Hall, 2 teams that are middling in the Big East at best. And then they beat Butler by 30. They hammered Butler here this week since the poll came out. Miami, the U, you can see it here. I don't really need to do it. 15-4. They dropped 3 spots, though, to number 20 under Jim Larangara. Florida Atlantic moves up 3 more spots. Last week, the first time Florida Atlantic ever ranked in the top 25. St. Mary's, who's going to push Gonzaga in that West Coast Conference tournament, I think. I think St. Mary's very, very well might beat Gonzaga. They'll both get in the tournament. And St. Mary's would be another team I would watch out for in those first couple of rounds as a team that might surprise somebody and make a Sweet 16 run. Providence in the Big East down to 23. Clemson down 5 spots in the ACC to 24. And New Mexico under Richard Pitino, we've talked about a couple of times, 18-2 out there in the Mountain West. Good job for them. They're now number 25. And out of the rankings this week, Rutgers and Arkansas, who's really, really come crashing down. It brings us into some bracketology talks. This is Joe Lunardi. I usually use Joe Lunardi's bracketology as my guideline to start some conversation. And we do have a couple comments here. Let me, Rick, I think, come on, where's my, always grabbing the wrong mouse. Rick says, correct, wooden bats. There you go, CA. So some good wooden bat baseball up here in the Northeast. I haven't been to a perfect game league game. That's hard to say in quite a while. But it's really, really good baseball for sure. If you want to get out and see some good baseball and you're up in the area, do that. There's teams everywhere from Amsterdam to Cooperstown to there's teams here in Albany. I don't know how far south they go, Rick. You would know better than I. But it's some really good baseball. Rick, maybe when they come down here and they play the Albany team, we should get together. I'll come up to Amsterdam for a game. You come down here to Albany for a game, and we'll have some fun. And by the way, you've got the Tri-State Valley Cats here as well. Independent league, coached, managed again this year by Pete Incaviglia, former Major League Baseball player. Well, Kansas State is on fire. They have only gone 2-2 of it recently, but they're really an underrated team. They got their star player back. They've got a first-year coach who's been a lifer as an assistant, and things are clicking for Kansas State. And in the Big 12 overall, really, really good for sure. So let's take a step back and take a look at some of the bracketology. I don't know. We'll look at I don't have it listed as bracketology, but that's fine. Top 4 picks right now. I think I think Purdue and Alabama right now are probably, without a complete collapse by both of these teams, they're locks, I would say, right now for number 1 picks. Seeds. Other teams that are still in play, Kansas, despite their recent losses, I think will come back, and I think they'll have a chance to get in there. Houston should have a chance. TCU, Tennessee, we talked about. Tennessee's probably I would say probably after Purdue and Alabama, maybe the best spot after that. Texas will be in play. We mentioned UCLA, Arizona, Kansas State. Those are the teams I would say are in position to challenge for those number 1 seeds. And number 1s, number 2s, it probably doesn't matter that much whether you're a 1 or a 2, but where it gets really interesting is the groups of last 4 buys, last 4 in, first 4 out, next 4 out. That's kind of where we're going to concentrate right now. Right now, according to Joe Lunardi, and we'll go through the conferences here in a little bit, the last 4 in would be Boise State out of the Mountain West, who's playing good basketball, Maryland out of the Big Ten, Pittsburgh, Jeff Capel, who came into the season really on the hot seat in Pittsburgh, has done a great job of bringing that team back. I think they're 13-7. A couple of days ago, they were 13-7. We'll take a look at the conferences here in a second. Good job having them right now in the tournament with a bye, not having to play in that first 4. Ohio State would be the last one with a bye. The last 4 teams in, according to Joe Lunardi, Arizona State and Bobby Hurley, who's done a very, very good job there after a couple of tough years coming in from Buffalo. Northwestern out of the Big Ten. You don't hear their name mentioned that often with the NCAA tournament. Kentucky, one of the blue bloods who's really been struggling this year. And Penn State out of the Big Ten, another team that's not, readily identifiable as a NCAA contender. First 4 out, and I'll get to your comment. I see one up there. First 4 out, sorry, Alan. Oklahoma State, West Virginia, 3 Big 12 teams, first 4 out, and USC out of the Pac-12. The next 4 out, Nevada, I might have an argument there. Utah State, Florida, and Wake Forest. And he's got his complete bracket. We're not going to look at the entire bracket, but his breakdown right now would be, oops, is that going to take me? Oh, yeah, I didn't want that. Damn it. Sorry, hold on me. So here's the breakdown right now by conference. Big Ten, 10 teams out of the Big Ten, 8 out of the Big 12, although I still think the Big 12 is the best conference in the country. The ACC with 7. I'm a little surprised with that. We'll look at this in a second. SEC with 5. Big East with 5. Mountain West with 3. That's a good showing for them. The Pac-12 with 3. That'd be a big disappointment. The American with 2. And the WCC with 2, as we mentioned. Then you got all your other, 1 seed leagues, obviously, to fill this brackets in. So a lot of basketball to be played, obviously, but that I think that is a very interesting look at my first look at the bracketology this year, and we'll certainly continue to look at it as we go. Xavier versus UConn playing right now in a tight one, 56-54. Let's take a quick look at the scoreboard since CA took us there. Took us. I just said took us. I think that's pretty funny. I'm having all kinds of computer issues today. Bear with me, folks. Let's look at the top 25 real quick. What's happening? I like to do that. Right now, 62-56. Xavier. So UConn and Xavier, UConn really struggling. Xavier's playing good basketball, though. Houston and another tough tussle in the American. They're up 38-31 38-34 over UCF. Tennessee 35-24 over Georgia. Let's go through some of the standings while we got some time. And I do want to talk about, we're going to talk a little bit about Bronny. And any topics you have on the NCAA tournament or even back to football a little bit, we can certainly do that. And I'm willing to jump back and forth. I do want to talk a little bit about Bronny James and some other topics as we go forward. We're going to look quickly. We're going to go through all the conferences quickly. It's 8:05. We got plenty of time. And I will... the Atlantic Sun Conference, I'll identify probably the one bid league. So we go through here. Liberty and Kennesaw State tied at 7-1 in conference. Both teams with good overall records. This is going to be a one bid league. This is a league that's kind of been, I don't know. I mean, Austin P. Governors are in this league. Carlos, 2-6 in the league. Sorry, 8-13 overall. Gulf Coast. Florida Gulf Coast, who was a big story here, if you remember, probably 10 years ago now, maybe a little bit more, where they went to Sweet 16 out of nowhere. Stetson's been good over the years. This is going to be a Liberty in Kennesaw. Basement Bob needs to confirm playoff. Basement Bob, I haven't heard from him in a while. I guess he's taking his lawsuit elsewhere. Where else? Where am I here? I can't even tell what league I'm in. American East. The Albany Great Danes, 1-6. By the way, their coach, Coach Killings, was arraigned on assault charges. Last year, he had a run-in and was suspended for a few games by the university for putting his hands on a kid inappropriately. Again, does this rise to the level of simple assault? I mean, come on. But he was arraigned this week, and not a good situation for the Albany Great Danes here locally. 6-16 overall, 1-6. UMass Lowell is leading that conference, 5-2. Vermont, who's always a power in that conference, 4-2. I would say, and UMBC, who we know very well, upset Virginia in the first round of the tournament here a few years ago to become the first 16 seed to win. They also are in the running, as is Binghamton. It's a very close league, as it usually is. I like Vermont to come out ahead here. In the American Athletic Conference, we mentioned Houston falling out of the number one spot in a tough. They lost to Temple at home. Temple's 6-2 in the league, playing good basketball. Certainly a basketball power in the past. Memphis is 5-2 in third place there. Penny Hardaway. Memphis, by the way, said to be in the running for my aforementioned Bronny James. We'll see how that goes. And Cincinnati 5-3. This is probably going to be. I mean, right now, I think Lunardi has this as a one bid conference. I'd be shocked if they didn't get two bids out of this league, though. The A10, interesting battle here with the VCU, who's been a power in this league through the last few years, even done some damage in the tournament, gone to a Final Four from the first four, I believe. Again, quite a while back now, under Shaka Smart, who we just talked about before he went to Texas. Did a great job at VCU. They're fighting with the St. Louis Billikens and the Dayton Flyers. And again, this will probably be a one bid league, but I could see sneaking two out of here and stealing one away from the ACC or the Big Ten. The ACC led right now. Again, this league still looks a little upside down. It's starting to get more right side up. Clemson at number one, though, 9-1. They just lost the other day. 17-4 overall, still 24th in the country. Virginia under Tony Bennett, 7-2, 15-3. They'll be a contender for a number one slot if they were to win the ACC championship. Miami, the U, in third place here. North Carolina starting to right the ship in Huey Davis's second year, playing better basketball the last week. And Wake Forest is in fifth place here. Then we get to Pittsburgh 6-3. I mentioned Jeff Capel, who was really on the hot seat, starting to fight his way back. Syracuse under Jim Boeheim, they just can't get it going. They're 6-4, which isn't awful, but I think Jim Boeheim, 78 years old, and I think you're going to see, if not this year, then next year will be Jim Boeheim's swan song. Having trouble recruiting. I think when you're 78 years old and nobody knows what the succession plan is going to be. There was a time where they had one with Mike Hopkins before he left for Washington, where he's in big trouble now. I think it was still easy to recruit, but when Joe Girard, who's a great player, local kid here from Glens Falls, when he's your go-to guy, when he's your marquee player, things aren't going to be very good. We got a couple comments here. John DeLon in the room. We'll get to your league here in a second, John, when it comes to basketball. Congratulations. You haven't been around. I'll give you a chance to crow a little bit. Congratulations to your Georgia Bulldogs. I'm not your Georgia Bulldogs, but your SEC champions winning the national championship. I did bet Georgia at the end, so you know. In fact, I bet them. I bet Ohio State to cover, and they did. And I bet Georgia. We won't talk about the other bet. We'll get to your SEC team in a minute. So you get a chance to crow a little bit. His own player. Yeah, his own player. Yeah, he's also been sued by the player, and he was arraigned on assault charges. Rick, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, look, you can't. We know that things are raised to a certain level, right? We saw Bobby Knight really step over the line with the Reed kid before he left Indiana, put his hands around his throat. By all accounts, I mean, there was a time where you could grab a kid a little bit. I'm not saying you physically abuse a kid. Don't get me wrong. But now you can't even look at a kid sideways. You're going to worry about, being charged with assault, for crying out loud. I don't know. Moving on in the ACC, Duke struggling. Duke had gotten off to a pretty good start under John Shire in his first year, replacing the legend, Coach K. They've fallen to 14-6 overall, 5-4 in the conference, and dangerously close to the bubble when it comes to the NCAA tournament. Name recognition will help them for sure. What do you got here, John? That game was boring. It should kill your watch party. The game was over by freaking. At least I got to bed early. You made a ton of food. I don't remember. I missed my invite, John. You fell asleep. Did you wake up? Did you fall asleep with people still there, or did they go home? Fell asleep, woke up when it was 38-7, and put casino in a DVD player. I think that game was more violent than casino. TCU let more blood than Joe Pesci. Big 12. I will tell you again, the best conference in the league when it comes to basketball. We're on basketball now, John. So when you make your comment that I'm crazy, I'm talking about basketball. Iowa State leading the conference now after Kansas State lost the other night. I believe to Iowa State. They're both 6-2. Both ranked in the top 12. This league has 6 teams ranked in the top 25. I think they're going to get 6 teams in. I think they might get 7, depending if Oklahoma can get themselves close to that 500 mark. Again, you know how I feel. Teams ought to have to be 500 in their conference to be able to get to the NCAA tournament. And if you got to take teams from normally one bid leagues, then do so. But they have to be 500 in their conference. But Iowa State, Kansas State, Texas, TCU, Baylor, Kansas, they're all going to be in. It's just a matter of whether Oklahoma State or Oklahoma can get it together to grab another seed. Big East, resurgent. Xavier Musketeers, 8-1, number 13 in the country. Right now they're beating UConn, who's been on a really bad streak, as we talked about, falling from number 2 in the country to 19 in about 2 weeks. The Marquette Golden Eagles, 8-2 under Shaka Smart, as I talked about earlier. Shaka Smart doing a great job there. These teams been on fire since December, middle of December, just before Christmas. Providence playing well. They're also 23rd in the country. They're 7-2 in the Big East. But they'll get in. Xavier's getting in. Marquette's getting in. Providence is getting in. Creighton's getting in. Seton Hall probably on the bubble. UConn will get in. Villanova finds themselves on the bubble because of a bad start. Their first year without Coach Jay Wright. And St. John's. This team is too good with too much talent under Mike Anderson to be 3-6 in the conference. They had a big win to get to 3-5 against UConn, and then just came back with a real stinker the other night. So this team can't get out of their own way, and Mike Anderson may not get another chance if this team doesn't make the NCAA tournament this year. John DeLon's people left before he falls asleep. That's a good thing. They might have cleaned your whole house out. That was a shame. He made 6 extra large pizzas, hummus, guacamole, and my mom brought a big pot of chicken and gumbo. Wait a minute. How am I not invited to this party with chicken and sausage gumbo? No shrimp? You gotta have shrimp in the gumbo, don't you? Gotta have shrimp in the jumbo, John. The Big Sky is going to be a one-bid conference. Probably come Eastern Washington's 8-0, 14-7 overall. Should come down to them in Montana State. The Big South. UNC Asheville will probably be the winner of this league. Again, it depends on the tournament play, obviously, but I would say it's going to come down to UNC Asheville or Radford here, as so often does. Winthrop usually is a good bet to make the tournament, but they are not playing good basketball this year. The Big Ten. Interesting that this is the team that Joe Lunardi's now got 10 teams getting into. So he's got to have Purdue, who's number one, and going to be on that 1 seed, and probably the number 1 seed overall, especially if we're to end today, which it's not. Rutgers is second, not ranked, though. They got 1 ranked team. So he's got 10 teams in a tournament. They've got 1 ranked team in the top 25, the Big Ten does. But Rutgers will get in. Michigan will get in. Northwestern, just keep playing well, you'll get in. Illinois, Michigan State, Indiana's playing better. Mike Woodson's got that team righted a little bit. Wisconsin's played better recently. Fran McCafferty's got Iowa playing better. So you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. He's got Maryland, I think, maybe on the bubble. They might have been one of the last 4 in. That'd be 11. So I don't know who he's got out here because I don't want to go through the whole bracket. But Big Ten with a chance for 11 spots in the tournament. That would be a record. Now, but we get sausage. Unless we're making it wrong up north here, I get sausage and shrimp in my gumbo. No? God, I love gumbo, though. Here I am talking about gumbo. Thank you, John, for coming back. The Big West, UC Santa Barbara, UC Irvine, a lot of UCs, a lot of University of California teams in this conference. Probably Santa Barbara or the Anteaters, one of my favorite nicknames, and the Gauchos, is one of my favorite nicknames as well. Will be the representative here. 1 bid. The Colonial Athletic Conference, 1 bid. It's going to be Charleston, most likely. Charleston's going to be an interesting case study. They're 21-1. They're 9-0 in the conference. If they were to lose their conference tournament, does this become a 2-bid league and they steal a bid away from one of the powers? That's possible. That's what some of the things we'll be watching out for here as we go through this rest of the season. Conference USA, we mentioned Florida Atlantic. They'll be the favorite going into their conference. This is a 1-bid league. Again, another interesting conversation. Should they lose their tournament? This is where you get into this is where the Power Fives lose their 10th and 9th picks, because somebody like Florida Atlantic or Charleston loses their conference tournament, and then they have to get an at-large bid if they feel if it's felt it's warranted. None of the independents are going to get in. There's only 2 left in basketball. The Horizon League, Milwaukee playing really good. Northern Kentucky playing really well. Youngstown, Cleveland State, who's got a pretty good tournament history of pulling some surprises, as does Oakland. So this is going to be a 5-team battle in this conference. And again, one bid. A lot of fun for those teams. Ivy League is a cat fight right now between the Tigers, no pun intended, and the Cornell Big Red. I like Cornell this year to win this thing. We talked about the MAC, the Metro Atlantic Conference, where local favorites, Siena Saints, 7-2. They did lose their last time out. Still leading by a half game over Rick Pitino's Iona Gales, and the team I couldn't remember their team nickname. Quinnipiac. This will be a fun tournament. I don't know where they're playing this tournament this year. It's much more fun when it's here in Albany. Used to go to we'd go for every game when they played this game here in Albany, and I wish they'd move it back here full time because they don't draw. They come here to Albany, they get 10,000 people in that building, maybe more. They go to Buffalo, they go to Atlantic City. I think they play in Atlantic City the last few years. They don't get 10,000 people in the venue for that. They ought to be here. And as I mentioned earlier, Iona will be here Friday night. I got a dinner to go to, so I might go over there for the second half if I can, because I'm not going to be far away. I'm not far away. I can get there in 10 minutes from my house. So anyway, it's going to be a one bid league. I don't think Iona is good enough this year. They've been maybe in the past to get an at-large bid if they didn't win the tournament. Neither one of these teams is good enough to get an at-large bid. This will be a one-bid league. Mid-American, you got Akron and Kent State fighting out there. Maybe Toledo gets in play there. The Mid-Eastern Atlantic, one-bid team. It'll be Howard or probably Maryland Eastern Shore. Missouri Valley used to be a very good conference. Now it's a middling conference at best. Southern Illinois, Walt Clyde Frazier's alma mater, leading this conference right now at 9-2. Belmont, who's had some good teams the last several years, is 8-2, and I think those are the two best teams here in this conference. Drake, who's had some good tournament appearance records recently, could pull an upset in that conference tournament. And we'll talk about the conference tournaments when we get to that point, once I'm back from vacation, probably. Mountain West, better than you think. One-ranked team in New Mexico, who's actually fifth in the conference at 5-3, but they're 18-3 overall. Richard Pitino, has that team playing really good basketball, but they stand behind San Diego, Boise State, Nevada, Utah State, and then New Mexico. I think right now Lenardi's got them with 3 bids. I think they could sneak a 4th one in there, depending on how the tournament goes. The Northeast Conference, St. Francis, Fairleigh Dickinson, one of those teams should win the conference and get that one bid. Ohio Valley, another one bid team. Watch out for Morehead State in this. I read some stuff about them this week. Watch out for that team come tournament time. Right now, Southeastern Missouri State and Tennessee Tech are tied at 5-3. So is UT Martin, by the way. And the Pac-12, a bit of a disappointment. UCLA 8-1. They've got 2 ranked teams. Arizona 6, UCLA 8. UCLA leads 8-1. Arizona 6-3. Utah 7-3. Don't think Utah's going to get a bid though, unless they win the conference tournament. Because I think Arizona State, if they're only going to get 3, if Lenardi's right, it's probably going to be UCLA, Arizona. They're in easily. Then it comes down to Utah or USC or Arizona State. And Arizona State's probably played a better overall schedule than the other 2 teams. So we'll see. And then Oregon's still in play, and you could have an upset in this tournament. Patriot League, Colgate Raiders here in New York State, Western New York State. Colgate is 9-0, the favorite to take the Patriot League bid. The Southeast Conference, John DeLon. I know you aren't as excited as you would be in football, but some good basketball being played there. Alabama, as I said, their highest ranking after December in their history, number 2 in the country. Nate Oates channeling Wimp Sanderson, wearing the plaid jackets out there. This is a good basketball team. It's a veteran basketball team with good guard play, which really plays well in the NCAA tournament, and I like their chances. Auburn's now in second place. Bruce Pearl's had this team on the upswing here in the last month or so, won 5 in a row now. Alabama's won 8 in a row. And Tennessee, who probably has got a shot at that number one seed line as well to go along with Alabama. It's going to be hard for them both to get there because the conference winner is probably going to be the conference tournament winner is probably going to be a number one seed. We only got about 5 minutes left here because I do have to jump on with Robert Butler at 8:30, but we'll finish up here. Texas A&M will have a shot. Kentucky's got a shot, playing better now after a really bad start to the season. Florida straightening out a little bit. Missouri's falling back a little after resurgence in their program. And Georgia, Vanderbilt, the rest are. Arkansas has really been a disappointment. Injuries have derailed their season, but, injuries are part of this thing. Southern Conference, Samford will be the favorite for that one bid. Southern Conference, Nichols or Southeastern Louisiana State likely will get in. The Southwest, watch out for Alcorn State. Maybe even Grambling getting in there. The favorite right now would be the Southern Jaguars. The Summit, you got Oral Roberts, who's done pretty well in the tournament a couple of times, so watch out for them. I like them a lot to win this tournament and get in there. The Sun Belt, another one-bid league. Marshall or Louisiana should get that. West Coast Conference, again, I think St. Mary's is going to beat Gonzaga for the conference tournament, get their automatic bid, and they'll get one other. The other team will get the at-large. Doubtful Santa Clara or Loyola Marymount or BYU can steal a third seed unless they win the tournament. And in the Western Athletic Conference, probably Seattle or Utah Valley will get the winner there. So there's kind of a look. By the way, Bronny James, as we got a few minutes left here, I got to get to some comments, but Bronny James was named a McDonald's All-American today, and he's starting to come in his own. We haven't really known a lot about Bronny, but it appears he's made an official visit to Ohio State. Penny Hardaway has spent a lot of time at his games. John Shire has spent some time at a tournament that he played in earlier this year. And USC and UCLA seem to be the players for him. Nobody seems to know really how good Bronny can be. What do you got here? What do we got here? There's our boy Dan Harris. Good to have you with us, Dan. Always good to have you with us. And as we've gone through the conferences here, I got a couple minutes before we got to sign off. I want to say hi to Dan, and guys, all send your best wishes to Dan as he continues his recovery and working behind the scenes at Let's Talk Sports. And Dan and I are going to talk a little bit about a couple more appearances for myself on his network and some content I'm going to do as far as getting back into interviews. As I mentioned, I started out doing this podcast with interviews of former baseball and football players and some basketball coaches, and had a lot of fun doing it, and got away from it because of the time it took to get the guests involved. And Dan has graciously offered to help in that producing part of it. So I appreciate that, and look forward to I lost my banner, so we're just going to leave that up there as we go on. So there we go. So I appreciate Dan helping me out in that area. So guys, we're going to wrap it up here. I appreciate everybody coming in, Rick, and the music. Alan, Carlos,